episode 5, we are going to be working on the African penguin exhibit, and we're going to do a pretty simple one that's used all across the world in lots of different exhibits for the African penguin, and it's even used in my local zoo. So obviously, first we're going to start off doing what we usually do, making the general shape of what we want our exhibit to look like. And then we are actually going to make this a very rocky exhibit. So the idea I've had for this one is I'm going to make essentially a giant swimming pool right in the center of the exhibit, have a bit of a rock outcropping to cover up the entrance and exit, and then have it extend into the water. And I'll discuss more about that once we start getting to it. Now, as for the African penguin, there's actually a decent amount of interesting information about them, and let's start off with their names. They got a lot of names. So we know it as the African penguin from the game. However, it also has some of the other names. The Cape penguin, based on where it's from. The entire coastline of southern Africa and southern Namibia. It's also known as the South African penguin, for obvious reasons. The black-footed penguin, again, kind of self-explanatory. And then the most interesting of their names, the jackass penguin. And the jackass penguin is because of the strange donkey-like noises that they make, which isn't really exclusive to them, but they got stuck with the name. However, it is also a fitting name because they tend to do this early in the morning and are very, very annoying from what I hear. Now, their scientific name, Pheniscus demersus, meaning wedge in Greek, and the Latin word for the act of plunging or diving. So, it's pretty fitting. The wedge part comes from the shape of their flippers, wings. One second. Okay, they're flippers. They're considered flippers, not wings. Very important information there. Now, on top of that, the African penguin, as we all know, is endangered. However, unlike with a lot of animals, it isn't due to poaching or overhunting, and not entirely the destruction of their ecosystem. However, yes and no, it's not like deforestation or clearing land. It's because of oil spills, mostly. That's the big one. Along with overfishing. The competition with human fishing in South Africa has really made it difficult for the African penguin. Have to eat 1.5 pounds of fish, which is about 1/5 of its weight. For reference, if you're, let's say, 150 pounds, you're pretty much going to be eating 30 pounds of food a day. Now, let's jump over to the exhibit itself, and we are going to discuss what I've been doing. So, as you can see, we're starting to fill in that little pond that I decided to make, and whenever you push down and make it the uniform depth you want to add a little bit of a raise around the edges before you soften out the area. That way, it looks more seamless and more like a proper dip instead of just a crater in the earth. And I always use coarse, whether it's coarse sand, coarse soil, whenever it has to do with water. I think I discussed this in the Cape Buffalo video, and as you can see, we're making a little outcropping for them to go through. So, because the African penguin is obviously an ocean-dwelling animal, I used rough water instead of calm water, what we're going to be using here. Now, while I'm making this little spit to give them a chance to go out into the water and make it look a bit more presentable for the audience, I'm going to leave this little gap underneath the stone. That way, they would be able to swim under it and have a full loop, almost like a track course. And I'm going to add this little one that they can go straight from the water onto the rocks if they so choose. They can do it anywhere, but this will be a bit more appealing to look at. We're also going to add some extra rocks. There's not really a science to how you do this to make it look more like fit together. So we're just going to take some small rocks, put them in the corners, make it look a bit more presentable. Now, South Africa is very proud of their African penguins. They've actually got it on their coat of arms, which is probably the largest cultural significance that these animals have. Believe it or not, there wasn't too much I could find about the old traditionals when it comes to the cultural influence of the penguin. Now, when it comes to penguins, you're actually going to want to adopt quite a few penguins whenever you get this set up. I think I started with 4. That's the best way to go. And they should be roughly even male and female because these species of penguin are monogamous. They mate with one partner and then stay with them their entire lives. And they have been known to come back to the same beach every year, time and time again, to mate. And this has led to it being almost a tourist attraction in the locations they come by. There was a recent new nesting area in South Africa on a residential beach that had actually sort of used it as an opportunity to teach about this endangered animal, which I think is a great idea as long as they, keep their distance and they don't overstay their welcome and let the penguins do what they need to do. What I'm doing is I'm setting up this rock formation, and I'm leaving this little gap here because I'm actually going to make it flat so that the trail to look into the exhibit is actually right on top there. I'm going to put a rail so that it is almost like an overlooking patio. So, as long as you keep the rocks at a good enough height, and obviously these are not big animals, it's very simple to do, you actually don't need a physical barrier when it comes to the walkways. Most of the time, I do say most because this game's a little weird, the guests won't walk off it. So there's actually 3 other penguin species that are closely related and are very similar in appearance to the African penguin. These would be the Humboldt, the Magellanic, and the Galapagos penguins. Now, they are best differentiated not only from where they live, but also little differences in their appearance. Starting with the closest one, geographically, would be the Magellanic, which comes from the name of explorer Magellan. Those are the ones that are found in Australia, New Zealand, and other places of the South Pacific, parts of Antarctica as well. And they are one of the closer ones. They're kind of in the middle when it comes to similar appearances. So the difference between them and the African penguin is the African penguin has that single band on the neck and chest area. The Magellanic has 2. Next would be the Galapagos penguin, which is exactly where you would expect. And they're mostly black. They got a similar body layout, but their color is almost completely black. And then the Humboldt penguin, which looks almost exactly the same, but the difference is has that pink, almost eyeliner look. They don't have that. It's completely missing. It's all black. And those can be found off of the coasts of Chile and Peru. They'll also be found in parts of Ecuador and Colombia, but not very often. So, if you're ever at a zoo and wondering which of these 4 it is, now you know the difference. It's almost completely black, Galapagos. It has a single bar and pink eyeliner, it's the African. A single bar with black eyeliner, Humboldt. And 2 black bars, that's going to be the Magellanic. Now, if we look at what I'm doing right now, adding the rocks in different formations, different levels, I'm trying to make it look more natural because these square formations don't happen in real life. You'll never find just a square rock. It'll be a little different. There'll be bits jutting out in different locations, and that's just going to make it much more visually appealing, not only to your guests, but if you ever want to show off anything you make, then I would highly recommend it. Now we're going to add some dirt, some stone, give it a bit more of an aesthetic look, and eventually we will start to worry about the foliage that we're going to add. And we're going to put some extra rocks. So it's good to put some rocks every once in a while. Give them a little bit of cover in case they don't want to run into their burrow. They'll just be able to hide behind that, get out of the way of view. And it also makes it more, again, aesthetically appealing. That's a big part of the exhibit, is to make it aesthetically appealing. Now, because of the desert-like biome that they are used to, even though the water being involved, I highly recommend that you minimize how much foliage you put in there. And they also are not a fan of large quantities of foliage. So, in the water you can put what you need, put it all the way on the bottom, give it some life. But then, as you can see, I am putting them on the outside of the exhibit itself or out of the way of the penguins so that it has more of a lively appearance and still meeting the criteria required for the African penguin. Alright, now a bit of a history lesson about the African penguin. Now, the first penguin was purported to have come about around 65 million years ago, just after the death of the dinosaurs, which was pretty common for the time. Birds really did make a quick comeback, and penguins were definitely among them. Now, the penguin that we know as the African penguin only came around 2.5 million years ago, which is still an extremely long time ago, but in the grand scheme of history, it might as well have been yesterday. And while I'm on the topic of the interesting facts about the penguin, there's actually a little bit of biology I want to go over. The first and foremost is their pattern, their color pattern, and that is a very common type of coloring of animals in nature, especially when it comes to aquatic animals. Having a light body and dark back pretty much gives camouflage for both things looking up at you from under the water and looking down at you from above. Looking down into the water is much darker, looking up is much brighter, so that half and half color that they have is great for not being seen. Now, unlike with other bird species, penguins have thicker bones, not the hollow bones that we expect. And this is for the same but exact opposite reason. So the same reason is it helps them with how they have evolved to swim in water. The opposite part is birds usually have hollow bones so that they can fly, while penguins have thicker bones so that they can sink. And that's the main reason. Now, one more thing before we start wrapping this up is they actually release salt by sneezing. If you ever hear them make that kind of sound, it's them releasing salt from their nostrils. So, now we're getting our animals in here. We're just taking a look. Everything's good. They like the terrain. Might need a little more soil because, even though it's good enough, it's better to be safe than sorry. Making sure it's all nice and good for them. Obviously, they want a little bit less foliage. Completely understandable. So we're just moving everything around. And from here on out, that would be the end of it. And we're just finishing up with our little touches. And we have an African penguin exhibit. Now, I appreciate you for watching. If you enjoy what I do, go ahead, like, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. I'm not really used to asking, but might as well. And if you just want to see more that's coming out, I'm also going to eventually be doing cooking to help with not just your education on animals, but your education on daily life. So go ahead, stick around and enjoy. Just remember, go out, enjoy the world. There's a lot to see. Alright? Thank you. Goodbye.